Regulatory foresight, protecting the consumer without stifling the advancement of technology. 5 of the greatest crypto minds offer their refreshing take on the implications of regulation and what it means for blockchain. Joseph Borge, WH Partners. Anna Trbovic, Grid Singularity. Ben Goertzel, SingularityNet. Stephen Nahm, Stanford Journal of Blockchain Law and Policy. Mark Kurmi, KPMG.
Always a good guy.
All right. Thank you for making it so early in the morning. This is the first panel of the day. Let's keep it fun, exciting to the extent possible. I'm Stephen Nahm, as it was noted, the managing editor of the Stanford Journal of Blockchain Law and Policy. And we have today a very distinguished panel of experts on regulation in the blockchain space. So let's start with some quick self-introductions, and then we can be on our way. Wonderful. Anna.
Thank you. My name is Anna Trbovic. Originally a startup, which has become an international organization over time, building a vertical energy industry blockchain, a platform for a range of energy apps, B2B and B2C likewise.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Mark Kurmi. I'm a director in KPMG, and I handle banking regulation, financial institution regulation, and more recently, virtual financial asset regulation and regulation which is directly related to blockchain. So, good morning.
Morning, it's Joe Borch. I'm a partner at WH Partners. I'm heading the blockchain advisory section within the firm, as well as the gaming advisory section. My background is gaming. I've been in the gaming industry for 12 years, including 7 years at the Gaming Authority, where I was also Chief Regulatory Officer.
Wonderful. Thank you. So to begin, I think what helps define us in the blockchain space is a persistent and admirable fearlessness in the face of old constraints and structures of power. Yet I think decentralized communities have seen bad actors and their chilling effects proliferate in the legal void. So just as our developers work on, for example, ways to punish, let's say, malicious miners in a proof-of-stake framework, so too must our legal and policy movers and shakers continue to be vigilant and innovative. The Stanford Journal of Blockchain Law and Policy encourages blockchain enterprises and regulators to sustain an ongoing dialogue, preferably enhanced by academia, to talk to one another rather than merely react to each other, which I think we've seen a lot of, right? Because neither side is doing everything right, and also neither side is doing everything wrong. So I'll ask the same question for each of our panelists. Feel free to jump in, no order or whatever. Do you feel that improved relations between blockchain enterprises and regulators are needed? If so, what can be done to build a better relationship? If not, what is the proper role of regulators in the space? Let's begin.
Thank you for the question, Stephen. I think if you ask what is better, you imply that there may be an issue. In our case, I have found that regulators welcome communication and education. They want to learn, and the more they learn, the more they become advocates of the technology. In energy space, which I'm aware that many of you are not as familiar with, it allows them to directly observe the market, and we hope in the future they will actually become a validator on our chain. They're not ready for that yet, obviously, but some are very advanced, and you'd be surprised that we even have a regulator that has a blockchain app, and that regulator is from Chile. And now all the neighboring countries in the region want to do the same. It's a very positive competition. And we're bringing them to Europe, and we brought them for the first time this April at Event Horizon, which is our annual energy blockchain conference, to showcase to other regulators what they're doing. And when I say regulation, it's at the global level. You know, it's from this confusion of, you know, do you want to be a utility token or a security token, or should you just register both and then have the headache of explaining which is which and what purpose it serves? So there is still too much confusion in the financial space. I understand that many of you have basic issues like having to do KYC in person and not through an app in some countries. So there's still a lot of misunderstanding. In energy space, again, there are vertical issues. So the most disruptive innovation that can come through energy blockchain apps is obviously peer-to-peer trading, which is illegal in most places because you have to pass through a tough process to get a license to become an energy trader, which your fridge cannot do at the moment. So we have yet to come to a space where this is allowed by law. But again, we do have some advanced regulators, and at the moment that's UK, Austria, and some others that are opening so-called regulatory sandboxes and allowing pilots. And we do spend a lot of time talking to them. So in addition to building the technology, and we're the, like I said, energy industry blockchain, we spend a lot of time in Brussels and other countries around the globe educating. And we do that often with our affiliates, and our affiliates are energy corporates and startups from around the world. So there is still a lot of time to be invested in education, and obviously startups and startup mode organizations don't have as much time as big corporates that tend to have departments to deal with this. So it is an opportunity cost, but one that we feel is also an important investment at this stage.
Just listening to what Anna just said and thinking at least from the regulatory side, you asked a question sort of, okay, blockchain enterprises and regulators. I think to me, especially what's going on in Malta, across Europe and across the world, regulators aren't asked to protect consumers, no, to protect investors. In fact, locally, that is one of the founding principles of our regulation. So you've got entities, blockchain enterprises, which is a big umbrella, right? You've got a variety of entities there, and you've got entities under the umbrella of regulators. If we take Malta as an example, you've got situations where the regulator has clearly said, sort of, listen, we want to protect our consumers, but we want to enhance innovation. How do we do that? We do that by going to the public and private industries and speaking to them, and actually creating a collaborative environment. I think. Again, taking Malta as an example, I will speak about Malta predominantly, but Malta has taken a bold step in where it would like to take this collaborative environment. And the collaborative environment over the past 14 months has clearly shown that if the industry, if enterprises, if regulators all come together with the main aim of ensuring that all parties are getting value out of this, and at the end of the day, the consumer, the investor, the one-man guy that's sitting at home and is actually utilizing some kind of a technology is actually protected. And I think that's the basis and underlying element for how blockchain enterprises and regulators should be communicating. I think there still needs a lot. There's still a lot to be done, quite frankly. But we're on the right track. If you look at other jurisdictions, there have been different ways of looking at the regulatory regimes versus how blockchain enterprises are actually operating. And obviously, that also drives down to the strategic direction which a country is taking. So I mean, holistically, just my final comment on this question would be, how can we improve this? So there's always going to be room for improvement. I think, and I'm really happy to see so many new faces, actually, that everybody continues to contribute, be it in Malta, be it overseas, be it in your jurisdiction, because in order to make sure that we continue driving the regulatory side together with the entrepreneurial side, there needs to be that collaboration. And there isn't that mentality that the regulator is there to dictate, the regulator is there to help innovate. So, yeah.
Wonderful. Joseph, yes. Go ahead.
I believe that the word here that we all have to mention is balance, finding the right balance, right? So we need to find the right balance between consumer protection, which is very, very important, it's crucial. It's the reason why regulation is there. But also balance with allowing innovation to happen and allowing startups to grow, allowing small businesses to grow. So ultimately, this is an industry that is in its infancy. So we have to help this industry. We have to allow this industry to make mistakes, to fail sometimes, but within a controlled manner. So ultimately, anything that is innovative cannot be really built on foundations that exist for financial services industry that has been here for 20 years, 25 years. This is something that we have to accept the fact that it is a new industry. There will be some failures, but ultimately, the regulation has to find the balance between allowing this industry to grow, to innovate, but also to protect the consumer. And I believe that the initiative that was taken by the jurisdiction here was extremely positive towards the same. Obviously, we have to keep in mind that, like in everything else, regulation, the regulatory framework, not just the legislative framework, will have its teething problems. So we can't expect everything to be perfect from day one. But I believe with the idea of having a regulation of cryptocurrency-related services, as well as a regulation of technology-related services through the certification of DLT and accreditation of auditors, I believe that we have found the right mix to have a proper ecosystem for this industry to find Malta as the ideal hub.
Wonderful.
If I may, just
ahead.
to continue with what Joe is saying, I think I agree totally. And I think you can't build on a platform that's already existent, but you can take best practices. Again, looking at what has happened here from a jurisdictional perspective, the plumbing, okay, so how the infrastructure has been developed and is currently developing, allows for entities like the Malta Digital Innovation Authority to come out and say sort of, listen, we are there, not to regulate, but to because regulate is a big word, it's certification, right, and it's self-certification, voluntary certification in certain cases. So if you look at having a regulator that is putting together sort of, listen, guys, this is the framework for this type of business, this is what we want to achieve, and we want to achieve it in this kind of a framework, but then having alternate certifiers, regulators, innovators come together and bring something to the table for the jurisdiction as a whole, but also for the industry as a whole, because every time we speak to someone here, we say Malta's small. So our level of activity has to be small and the economy has to be small. But in this case, this level of activity is not going to be based in Malta, or rather is based in Malta, but is there to service the rest of the world, not Europe, the rest of the world. So if we look at it, and I mean, this is testament, having all these people here, looking at Malta as a jurisdiction which could potentially bring something to the table in a regulated but yet innovative framework, I think is something which is fantastic, quite frankly.
Wonderful. We don't have much time left, but I just thought of a question. This is something we grapple with often in Silicon Valley, and I think it's important for everyone in the room to consider, to think about it, because again, the blockchain space itself, there are certain counter-conventional, traditional kind of philosophies, right, ethos. I was wondering, so in the sharing economy, obviously we have examples like Uber, Lyft, they've outrun regulation. They're kind of in stealth, and then suddenly they're very societally useful, can't put it back in the box.
They're also banned in many countries.
True.
By regulation.
Right. There are countries that reacted quickly, but then you also have BitTorrent, a second generation, early peer-to-peer network that still continues to outrun regulation. What are your 2 cents in terms of I think there are companies, enterprises that are tempted to kind of follow that model, and others that say, all right, let's be transparent, let's work with the existing regulatory structures, the government, and so forth, and let's do it that way. What do you think is there an ideal balance? Because there are just grumblings from both sides, right? One side saying these guys are out of control, another side saying, why do we have to just do the same old thing, the age-old, timeless kind of approach? So any thoughts on that? I know it's not an easy question. Also, I encourage the audience if you have any thoughts.
I can tell you that in our case, the most disruptive innovation, which is this idea that devices in your home trade among themselves and pick what's the best time and price to buy the electricity at, and then the home picks where it wants to buy the electricity from, whether it's wind, whether it's a panel from a neighbor, or if they want to send as a solidarity part of their savings to someone else who cannot pay for electricity. All of those are possible apps in our system. And the way that we see the potential of blockchain energy is that it can help with balancing, and that we no longer will need these so-called spot prices and other prices and mechanisms and incentives that the governments put together. So from our perspective, to make this happen, you're not adapting to the current regulation. You're saying, let's scratch all of the regulation and start from fresh, and let's have this technology create own market. Obviously, that requires a lot of testing, and the technology is not quite ready for a whole town, region, or country or globe to be connected in this way. But we are going in that direction, and then we will not be adapting to regulation, we'll be changing it completely. Now, there are many other applications where you don't need to do anything, where you're just improving a business process and you can work under existing legislation. So it's not an issue at all. And I'd say most of the apps fall in that category. But on the broader level, because we're a very conservative industry, right? So I think this is an ideal time for lawyers and tax advisors to thrive in, because there is no clarity whatsoever. If you ask them, they tell you, frankly, well, it's not clear at all how this could be legal, but it's also not illegal. And then you have to make a decision, and sometimes you don't want to make one. So, for example, we still have not done a public sale, and we don't know if we will because of this uncertainty. And if we do, are we going to do it just in one country? You forgo a short-term opportunity for long-term stability. So we would prefer if regulators would be more clear and if we paid our lawyers a little less. But I think it's going to take some time for all regulators to really understand and grasp and take this on. So it's great that Malta is one of the countries that is paying attention to this. Now, of course, Malta also has an image problem. So I wish that you as consultants can also help the government work on some public projects, like putting the land registry on a blockchain, or some other projects where you increase transparency, you decrease room for corruption, and you improve the legal environment overall. So it would be good that we have a country that has, applied blockchain to improve its public service as well, lead by example in that area as well.
So we have just a couple minutes. So maybe Joseph, if you have a quick thought, go for it. If not,
well, regulation,
yeah,
technology will always be ahead of regulation. This is very normal in all sectors. So the smart thing to do is to have regulation that is as technology neutral as possible. That is crucial. On your point, yes, I agree that the government should now live by what it's preaching and actually make use of this technology itself. I'm pretty sure there are initiatives going on. So we'll just wait and see. And I think that would be a very interesting thing, to have a government that is really making use of the blockchain technology in its operations.
Excellent. And quick 30 seconds from the audience. Yes, sir. Go ahead. I'm not sure. I can repeat what you say. Yeah.
There you are. There's a microphone coming.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Wolfgang Strasser. I'm a partner at a venture capital company based in Europe, Munich, and in San Francisco. And I'm also a former entrepreneur. And based on my long-standing experience with regulation, I have a very contrarian approach to what you just said on stage. My advice is, don't negotiate with the jurisdictions in location A. Go to B. That's more effective than negotiate in A. Second, don't ever rely on the laws, especially not initial laws.
Interesting.
Rely, if you have a government agency, then you can make a contract with, a contract that you can sue them for. That's my advice, based on regulatory experience in the telecoms industry, in the energy industry, and in the blockchain industry.
Good. More food for thought. Wonderful. Thank you so much, panelists, audience, and let's keep moving. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
Thank you.